Episode 2 of The Bachelorette contained a beauty pageant, a shocking elimination from a one on one, and a conversation about fantasy suites that was way too premature. Welcome back to our channel, everyone. We are going to be dishing on this week's newest episode of The Bachelorette, episode 2. But before we get into the recap, do not forget to give this video a thumbs up. And if you're new here, be sure to subscribe to our channel. We also have a live chat going on right now, so we're really looking forward to seeing some of your questions and comments on this recent episode. So definitely let us know in the live chat. We'll be getting to those shortly. As always, I'm your host, Zachary Reality, joined with Morgan Wright and Blakely McHugh. How are we feeling about this season so far? What did you guys think of last night's episode?
I mean, so far so good. We're still so early. I am really liking having two bachelorettes. I know that there's some controversy there, but I feel like it's making the episodes move a little bit quicker. But time will tell. It's still very early.
Same with you, Morgan. I'm actually really loving it. I mean, I feel like I always like a season the best when I really feel like I have a connection with the leads. And so I feel like because I have a connection with Gabby and Rachel and I just love them personally, or not personally, but as people, that it just makes me like much more invested in the show and what's going on and the men and all the love stories and everything like that. There are still questions that I have regarding on how all of this is working with two bachelorettes that are still lingering, but other than that, I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, it's interesting how they're like, filming at this house that they live at. And I really liked the scene
Mm-hmm.
where it was the one on one date and Nate came over and it was like Rachel's having breakfast. I think it's just like an interesting element that we've never seen before. It's almost like they're breaking the fourth wall a little bit, showing us the ins and outs of like behind the scenes instead of just like the standard mansion days and stuff. So I'm liking the
Mm-hmm.
dynamic between the girls. I'm still getting to know the guys. Definitely don't know everyone's name yet, but the season's going to be interesting. I think we're just getting started. And this week we started off things with a beauty pageant where the guys showed off their hidden talents, their hearts, and most importantly, their abs. I loved how they were like, how do we get these guys in Speedos? And then this was the way to do it. Morgan, who did you think shined the most during the pageant?
I mean, ugh, tough question when you say who shined the most. Seemed like everything was, covered by a black box, at least on my TV. We didn't get to see much at home. But obviously, who could forget Meatball pouring spaghetti sauce all over him? Gabby and Rachel really liked Logan. He didn't have to do all that extra stuff to maybe get some attention. So those two were the most memorable to me.
Yeah, Blakely, what about you?
I'm going with, as much as I hate to say it because I feel like there's some tea going on with Logan at the moment. I'm going with
Hmm.
Logan. I thought he was really creative in the whole butterfly thing starts with the worm. Like, although the worm isn't like this crazy good talent, I thought the whole concept of it was really funny and lighthearted. So I really enjoyed that. I also thought it was hilarious that we were like, can't wait to see their six pack abs. They kept talking about the six pack abs, and then we have these men with like dad bods and like only a handful of them have the six pack abs. But yeah, Logan I think shined the most for me.
Yeah, it seems like this is a good icebreaker. It's the one of the first dates of the season. They're just trying to get to know the guys. I think there was a lot of comments being like, "How dare they sexualize these men and put them in thongs while Yosef's daughter is watching back at home." If you don't remember Yosef from Claire's season, it was like a whole thing a couple years ago where the guys got naked, which I think is a lot. Like I remember last season with Rodney, he even got naked and ran around. I think like asking someone to get naked is a lot. But putting them in thongs isn't the end of
Mm-hmm.
the world if they're like blacking the box out. I think it's important that you know what you're working with. By getting these guys out of their suits. And like it was raining, so the pool party was canceled. So I really liked the date. The meatball guy was funny pouring the sauce on himself. I hope he didn't expect anyone to lick that off because that like probably wasn't gonna happen. And the girls ended up taking the top six guys to the after party, including Jason A, Johnny, Logan, and a few others. And Jason A was immediately, told Rachel as soon as they got to the date that he was interested in Gabby. He kind of claimed his territory pretty quickly. Morgan, good move by Jason A. Is he bold or was it too soon?
I don't know. It's hard. I feel like, my initial gut reaction to that scene was that it was a little bit too soon. They kept saying over and over and over again that first cocktail party, they didn't even get to talk to everyone, let alone length. So I feel like, this is the first time that they really got to sit down and talk to each other. And it seems like Jason A maybe didn't even give Rachel a chance. On the other
Mhm.
hand, this is uncharted territory to have a full season two Bachelorette. So maybe he just wanted to be decisive, because he knows the history with Clayton and how undecisive he was.
Yeah. Blakely, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think he gave Rachel a fair chance? Because Rachel was excited to meet him, and then you saw after the conversation, she went to go talk to Gabby about it because she was upset, but then Gabby was having a conversation with another guy. So do you think Rachel was getting too hard in her feelings, or do you think that it's just really new for her and she's just trying to figure it all out?
I think, frankly, in life, nobody likes to hear I'm choosing someone over you. I mean, even though it's not that, that's what it feels like when somebody says, I was here for someone else. And we obviously know from seeing last week's trailer for what the season's going to come, this week's trailer for what the season's going to look like, that Rachel gets told that a handful of times. So it feels like Jason is sort of setting precedent for what might be a reoccurring situation for Rachel, which makes me sad because nobody likes to feel that way. Nobody likes to be in that situation. Now, that being said, I think that it's weird for the men to play both sides. I feel like for the most part, you should know who you want when you're going in. To me, Gabby and Rachel are two very different personalities. Not only do they look different, so you like a lot of people have a certain type and how people look, they also behave differently. Their conversation styles are very different. Rachel's very much, she's a lot deeper right off the bat, where Gabby is a little bit more lighthearted. And so they just have very different styles. So I feel like the men should, for the most part, be going in with an idea of who they're more inclined to follow their heart with. And I think that it's good to establish that early. And so I appreciated his honesty and his transparency, because then there's no stringing along. There's no chance for Rachel, to really get maybe a little bit invested in him and then have her heart broken because he wants Gabby
Mhm.
instead. So I appreciated how upfront he was.
Yeah, I mean, I respect Jason A, but I kind of feel like, you know what, Blakely, I'm going to disagree. I think he kind of bit the nail too
Hmm.
quickly. I think that it's only week 2. You really need to get to know both of the girls before you make that clean and cut decision. Like, now there's no turning back for Jason A. He can't be like in a week or two, oh, I'm interested in Rachel again. Now she's cute. Because sometimes it takes a few weeks to start to like somebody. Like, I know that, like, sometimes I think someone's a friend, and then in a few weeks when I get to know them more, you start to develop feelings out of nowhere. So I feel like Jason A maybe should have just rolled with the punches a little bit, but I also understand that there is such limited time and you can only really talk to each girl a certain amount of time per night with so many guys there. So I get why he wanted to zone in on
Hmm.
Gabby in the beginning. But now this is opening up a bigger conversation because Rachel and Gabby, they're trying to like communicate to each other. They don't want to step on each other's toes. Like we saw this conversation this week where, they both had a connection with Logan and Gabby was like, "Oh, if you like him, like I won't go for him." And Rachel was like, "Well, I don't know." And then they were going back and forth. And in my opinion, I think that they shouldn't tell each other every little detail. I think that they need to just focus on getting to know the guys, and then over time, maybe in a few weeks, they can kind of say like, "Here's who I've been vibing with. Here's who I haven't been vibing with." Because if not, it's gonna like alter their connections because they're so worried about stepping on their friendship. They both fell in love with Clayton before, and they're still friends. So I think that they can maybe fall in love with the same guy and they'll be fine. Morgan, what do you think about that hot take?
I mean, I feel like there will come a time in the show where the decision has to be made. I don't think that decision is in week 2. I feel like you do need to really get to know the person. And I feel like even with Jason, he could have gotten to know Rachel in a respectful way just to see if there was anything there
Mm-hmm.
without, full on making out with her. And a week 4 or 5, that's when you can make that decision. I agree with you. I feel like if you're constantly worried about somebody else, you're not really ever going to be true to yourself. And at the end of the day, if you get down to it and the guy that you really fall in love with says he likes you and another girl, he's probably not your guy anyways. So I feel like they should get to know everybody, and then once they get down the line, they should maybe give their top 5 or 6 and then kind of
Hmm.
navigate it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
I think
Rachel and Gabby are dating multiple men. So the guys can date multiple girls too. Like, we're still feeling things out. What were you going to say, Blakely?
I think the difference though, like you brought up the Clayton reference, how they were both in love with the same guy and their friendship, stuck through that. The difference here is that they weren't in control of that situation, so it wasn't their choice to, they didn't have to choose. They weren't in, how do I explain this? They didn't have to choose, like, I'm choosing Clayton and you don't get him kind of thing. Clayton was the one who was
Hmm.
choosing who he wanted. Whereas in this situation, then, Rachel could say, well, I want him, even if Gabby likes him, or vice versa. And that's where I think that there could be a little bit of, an issue when it comes to them, and why it's different, because now they're the ones in control, and they're also the ones that could be potentially in control of hurting their friend because of who they like or who they want, or what
Hmm.
that dynamic looks like. And that's why it gets so sticky with the two bachelorettes. So I think that I'm a little bit on the side of, like, I like this over communication. While I think that it may hinder some relationships, for each person to kind of evolve and figure out, I think that this is like the only way that they kind of navigate, at least in the beginning, what they're feeling, and how to move forward. Because if they didn't, what if, right, if they didn't communicate, and who was it
Was
Logan who got
Logan?
the rose on that group date?
Yeah.
Yeah. Got the rose from Rachel. But what if, like, they hadn't had that communication, and then Gabby went first and gave the rose to Logan, and now Rachel's sitting there
Hmm.
like, well, shoot, that's who I was gonna give it to. Now who do I give it to? This whole thing. So it's like I kind of almost feel like the communication is necessary.
I know. I was thinking at first because I knew that they both liked Logan. I'm like, what if Logan gets two group date
Yeah.
roses at once? What is he supposed to do? Just like give it to a friend? Yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
It's a good point, Blakely, because if they tell each other everything now, it could, it will hurt them less later. But they both still need to explore it with Logan because they both like Logan and they made that clear. So they shouldn't be too worried about it while we're in such early stages of the show. But I think everything will play out. It was really difficult to see Rachel kind of struggling this week. She was
Mm-hmm.
seemingly struggling more than Gabby, who kind of had a better week with the guys. She made more connections. And I just think that it sucks for them when they're in the lead, they're in charge. You expect everyone to be there for you, and then there's this double bachelorette season. So it's going to be a lot of trial and error. They're kind of figuring things out as they go. It seems like they have more control over the rules than maybe Jesse Palmer does, or the producers. So time will tell what happens, but I know that I will appreciate the love story in the end if I see them struggle throughout the season. Like, we need to see the hurdles to appreciate it at the end. And as you mentioned, Rachel ended up giving her group date rose to Logan, and Gabby gave her group date rose to Johnny, who also seemed to be a hot commodity between the two of them. So, do you see those connections going far, Morgan? Could those possibly be hometowns, final picks? Where are your thoughts on it?
Honestly, I don't really get that vibe from them. There are a couple guys that I get the
Mm-hmm.
vibe that, like, okay, these are serious contenders. And I know we'll talk about it more, but like Nate, I think was amazing. Eric, I feel like him and Gabby get along really, really
Hmm.
well. So, those two names at the top of my head, no, if I had to make a bold prediction, I would say they will not make it to hometowns.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, they're still feeling things out, so we'll see what happens. And Rachel got her first one-on-one date this week. She decided to take Jordan V on a date, and they went up into an airplane and floated in the air. My heart was in my chest for that. I would not want to do that. Like, that seems so scary, but obviously that's very much Rachel's element. She's a pilot, and on the night portion of the dinner date, Rachel actually decided to send Jordan V home because something was missing. And Bachelor Nation was really upset about this. A lot of people were hoping to see Jordan V, and a lot of people were confused why Jordan V didn't get a chance to go back into the house and possibly pursue things with Gabby. So, Blakely, where are your thoughts on that and what went wrong with Jordan?
I mean, you know how much I loved Jordan from the first night. I thought he was one of the people who would have gotten possibly Rachel's first impression rose if he had made the move to give her a kiss when it was the right timing. I felt like they had such good vibes and such a strong connection on that first night. And then I even felt like they had strong connections in their date. So I think that's where a lot of people were confused on why she sent him home, is because we couldn't see what was missing. Typically, you can see an awkward conversation, or you can see that maybe what's important to them isn't lining up, or you can sort of just catch a vibe when you're watching that two people are not meshing. And I didn't feel like that came through for Jordan at all. I have a little soft spot for him. I think he's a sweetheart. I love him. I was really sad, as a lot of people were, to see him go home. And I had that similar question as to what if Gabby wanted to pursue Jordan? So my only answer to that question is that they have to have had a conversation before their one-on-one dates. Like, do you have absolutely any interest in this man? If I want to send him home, do I have free reign to send him home? That's the only way that I think that this could have worked without somebody else potentially wanting to explore a relationship with him.
There must have been something that happened off camera. I saw a few people on Twitter saying, "Oh no, Jordan made it clear he liked Rachel last week, so maybe he shot himself in the foot." But it's also like, if you zone in on one girl, like, what if this happened with Jason A? What if Jason A went on a one-on-one with Gabby and then they broke up? Like, there's no turning back, Jason A. You can't be like, "Oh well, can I try things with Rachel?" Like, no, no, no. Once you make your decision on who you're picking, like, that's it. So I think that the guys really do need to choose wisely if they're actually going to close in on one person. Morgan, could you ever go up in the airplane and do that date? Because that would scare the hell out of me.
Absolutely, but I'm an adrenaline junkie, so it would not bother
Mm.
me at all. I echo Blakely's, sentiments here, that I was just very confused because I didn't see what was lacking. I almost feel like Rachel freaked herself out because, we heard her say, "I want to be Rachel, not Rachel the Bachelorette." And I feel
Hmm.
like maybe she thought that there had instant, overwhelming connection, or think, "Okay, this is my person," when a lot of the time that doesn't happen. We've heard the terminology like a slow burn, or however you want to say it, where somebody starts off, as a dark horse, and then you get to the end and they're one of the top four. So I feel like maybe she jumped the gun with this. Also, I was just really confused because if you're not feeling somebody, or if something is missing, do you make out with them the way that Rachel did? Because if I'm on that
Mm-hmm.
date and I'm like not feeling the guy, I'm not gonna make out with him for 30 seconds. Like, if it's a quick peck and then okay, like, "Oh, I didn't love that. I wish he kind of would have waited." But they made out for like a long time. So I was very shocked by it.
To be
Can I
extra sure.
And I want to add too, something that you just touched on, Morgan, was this, almost like fascination. She's really focusing so much on this Bachelorette title. She wants so badly to be a good Bachelorette. Like, she's said it now multiple times that she doesn't want to mess up as the Bachelorette. She wants to do the right thing as the Bachelorette. And you can even see it with like her performance, like Alec and Brett Young. She's like, I brought them in, and it's almost like she thinks this is what is supposed to happen, because we've seen in past seasons where an artist comes in and they play the music and they have the romantic dance and that whole thing, where typically I feel like that usually happens a little later on, where you've actually built some connections with people. Off the top of my head, I don't remember any time where that's happened so early, like literally in the very first date. But I think that she's really getting in her own way of this pressure of being the perfect bachelorette, of planning the perfect date, of doing it all right. And because of
Yeah.
that, if something feels maybe a tiny bit off, now it's probably a bigger deal than it should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's just adjusting to being the Bachelorette. Gabby seems to kind of have it all together. Gabby also is 5 years older than Rachel, so maybe that's kind of playing
Hmm.
into it. But I just think Rachel needs a little bit to get her groove, and she just needs to not focus too much on Gabby's connections and just kind of focus on her own and being herself. And I think it will all work out for her in time because Rachel does have the biggest heart and you
Yes.
know how badly she wants to find love. So we are rooting for you, Rachel, and we'll see what transpires with some of your other connections. Moving on to Gabby's one on one date, she ended up taking Nate out on a date. It was very interesting to see Nate come over at the house in the morning, as I mentioned earlier in the live, with like Rachel being there. And it's just like that felt so relatable to me because it's like sometimes you do hang out with a couple or like your friend is around, your friend's over and your boyfriend comes over. So I just thought that was really, really relatable. And Nate ended up opening up about being a single dad, a girl dad, and they seemed to really hit things off. They were kissing all day, and he ended up getting the rose. Morgan, you said you liked Nate in the beginning. Do you like him for Gabby for the long haul, or do you just like him as a potential bachelor or paradise in the future?
Yeah, I think it's too early to tell, but I feel like anytime you get that emotion on a first date, it's a really good sign because they're already able to be so vulnerable with each other. I mean, Nate, you can tell really has a heart of gold when opening up about his daughter. And then, that kind of sparked Gabby to be able to be vulnerable with him in regards to not being close with her mother. And it's heavy stuff to talk about, on the very first date. But the fact that they felt so comfortable in doing that with each other gives me high hopes. I just think that he knocked it out of the park. I can remember the last time that I watched somebody's first one on one date and was like, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed. But that happened. I don't think that he will be the end result just because these single dads, man, they have a really hard time staying away from their child for the duration of, the Bachelor filming. So I feel like he's not going to make it all the way to the end, but he's definitely going to be a fan favorite.
Definitely fan favorite. A lot of comparisons already to Michael A, who was also a single dad. He's gonna be a fan favorite. Like everyone loves him online. He seems like a great guy. I don't know if him and Gabby, I agree. I don't know if they'll go the long haul. I don't know if I see that, but they're definitely vibing really, really quickly. Blakely, what were your thoughts on Nate and the date and everything?
What I really actually loved about their date is I felt like it brought out a little bit of depth in Gabby that we don't often see from her. I mean, she's just so sarcastic. Her grandpa calls her, his dingbat. So she very much has this sort of I don't want to call it a cloud, but a cloud over her, just giving this, she's a little bit aloof, is kind of the, what I get from her. So I felt like it was really special to see some depth to her talking about this conversation with her mother. Because we know she's intelligent. I love the way that she speaks. She always uses like very great vocabulary words, especially when she's angry. So we know that she has, this depth to her, and she's not a dingbat. I mean, she's like an ICU nurse for Pete's sake. So, she's got the smarts in there, the brains in there, but she's just so sarcastic and lighthearted. So I thought it was a really special moment to see that from her. What I also really loved too is her talking about her confusion of being a parent and whether or not she wants to be a mother, and if she can have the
Mm-hmm.
capacity to be a mother and love in that way, and the way that it could hurt because you love something so much. And I felt that that was a really special conversation because so much today in the world, we just live by these traditional norms where women grow up to imagine their wedding and their family and being a mother and how many kids they want. And I feel like as of recently, it's been a conversation where women don't have to feel this pressure of, well, I know for a fact I want to be a mom and here's how many kids and X, Y, and Z. So I thought it was really beautiful that she, opened up about that on such a big platform and, spoke freely about that. I thought it was really beautiful conversation they had in their relationship. And I think one of the two had mentioned that they felt like they knew each other for a long time. And I think that that's definitely like what the viewers felt as well, that this was just a comfortable, date and relationship between two people. I found it a bit odd that Rachel was there in the beginning, but again, goes to my point that they had to have had a conversation before, because there's no way. I mean, if I were Rachel, I would not want to be there at the beginning of their date if there was a potential that I was going to be interested in
Mm-hmm.
Nate, So it like sort of further proves to me that there had to have been a conversation. And to go off on a little bit more superficial point here, I'm just curious how his hair stays that way. Like, does he have a little bit of a kink in his neck to keep the hair over?
Yeah, that's so funny. I think he does. He has great hair. He knows what he's doing.
He has
And I
great
think I
hair.
think
It's just it doesn't move.
you bring up good points. I think they probably are chatting. It seems like they're in the house together, so they're probably chatting late at night. And I like that you brought up the parent thing because I was
Hmm.
going to ask you about that because Gabby did say that she didn't know if she was, ready to be a mom right off the bat. And I actually think that it works great that they're on The Bachelor right now and that they're living in this bubble because they can truly get to focus on getting to know each other. If you started dating someone who had a kid in real life, there might be more conversations or there might be more of an adjustment like, "Oh, I can't hang out with you tonight. I got to take my kid to the school or whatever, like after
Hmm.
school activities," where it's like now Nate can truly just focus on getting to know Gabby and Gabby can get to know him as a person. Obviously, they're going to talk about his daughter and bring her up all the time, but it will really set the tone for what will happen after their relationship when the real life and the real world kind of comes into it. And Nate said one really cool thing during this whole Chris controversy, which we're going to get to, where he said love can't have preconditions because Chris is talking about fantasy suites and all his rules, and I liked that Nate said that because it's true. Like you fall in love with someone, and then if they have a kid or whatever they have, it doesn't matter because you love them for who they are, and then you love everything about them. So I like Nate. We'll see what happens with him. Let's get into Chris and the fantasy suites. Morgan, do you kind of want to break it down and explain what his whole point was in this?
Well, honestly, it's hard to break down because I don't really know what his whole point was. He's basically saying that if and when he were to make it to fantasy suites, he would not be able to go through with the overnight if Gabby or Rachel been with another guy. And also that he doesn't know when he would disclose that information to Gabby or Rachel. And obviously, a lot of guys were like, what are you talking about? You have not even had one conversation with either of them yet, which I think is the biggest red flag. It's okay to think those things through your head because they have nothing
Hmm.
to do but sit in that house all day and think about the
Mm-hmm.
fact that they are filming for The Bachelor. You know what comes with The Bachelor. You're going to get a one on one date, maybe. You're going to go on group dates. You're potentially going to go to hometowns. You're potentially going to go to overnights and potentially be the bachelor. I mean, people think about these kind of stuff while they're sitting in the house doing nothing else. However, you have not had one conversation with either of them. So to say like, if and when I make it there, this is what's going to happen. Just, I mean, cockiness at its finest.
By
Yeah,
the
it's
way,
like
Morgan,
you.
I don't even think he
No,
was saying
continue.
if and when. It was, I am making it to the final four. I
Right.
know I'll be there. So, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be there, I need to start thinking about this. So, like you said, the cockiness was just like off the Richter scale. Like, there wasn't an if I make it, it was when I make it, and I'm making it to the final four, which I just thought was so bizarre.
Yeah, he was like, I plan on being there. And it's just like you
Yes.
you haven't made it through one rose ceremony. Like he didn't even get a rose. Like last week they invited everyone to stay because they didn't have time to talk to everybody. Like neither of them are interested
Yeah.
in you, Chris. No offense, but you were never making it. But I will say, I guess in Chris's defense, like I get what he was saying. Like I feel like maybe I would feel the same way. Like I'm not trying to sleep with someone that slept
Yes.
with someone else the night before. So it's not like his logic wasn't all there. Like he did bring up good points. It was just so irrelevant to the situation because they literally were in the house for 2 days. And it felt like he was just like sexualizing Rachel and Gabby, which is how they felt about it when he really doesn't even know them or anything about them. And things change when you fall in love and the journey, happens. So Chris definitely needed to get out of his own head because he sounded ridiculous,
I also have
right?
another comment about Chris sounding ridiculous. Yes, 100%. Like for them, I felt like for him, he was playing a game. He was in a reality dating show. He wasn't trying to find love, which I felt like was very poignant when I forget who it was that said to him, but they were like, if you make it to the final four, that means you're in love. And he combated that and said, no, that just means I made it to, to the end or something. Like he didn't agree that if you're making it to the final four that you're in love. Well, if you're making it to the freaking fantasy suites, that means you're ready to get down on one knee and propose, basically. Like
Mm-hmm.
you should be in love.
Well, it was funny because people were pointing out on Twitter that like fantasy suites happen at Final Three, so like clearly he's never seen the show before. If he thinks he's going to a fantasy suite at Final Four, so it's a good thing that Chris ended up leaving. So basically, what happened is Quincy and a few of the other guys told Rachel what Chris was saying, and then Rachel delivered it to Gabby. And then they confronted Chris on the situation, and Chris didn't seem to own anything. He was kind of dancing around circles, which really set Gabby and Rachel off so much so that they decided to kick him out. And then instead of leaving, he decided to come back in and confront the guys that quote unquote ratted him out. And instead, he ended up getting kicked out again. Morgan, what are your thoughts? Do you think he had a right to come back in? Did he? Because I feel like he just wanted to kind of address it with the guys and then leave. Like, I almost feel like he didn't get a chance, but then also like he should have explained it to Rachel and Gabby to begin with instead of dancing around it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Gabby and Rachel handled themselves in the best possible way. And I think, look, people make mistakes. Like I said, they sit around and they think about these scenarios all day long. So if I'm Gabby or Rachel, I can get over the fact if he comes back to me and says, look, this was a mistake. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I was just letting my thoughts kind of run wild. But it's the way that he went about like doubling down on it, no apology, not, just trying to justify his actions when there really wasn't any, like you guys said, sexualizing them after never even having one conversation. So that to me is the bigger issue than the comment itself, if that makes sense. But I do also agree with you, Zach. If it were me, I would want to talk to the guys too, like just
Mm-hmm.
before I left, say my piece. It's not like he was coming back in there to, you know, go at it
Try and win them
again with
back.
Rachel and Gabby. Yeah, he was just trying to talk to the guys like what happened. But at the end of the day, it's not about him. It's about Gabby and Rachel, and whatever they want is what's going to be done. So he had to go.
And they're like kicking him out, and he has like no idea where to go. Did you see the shot of him? It's like he's going around to the backyard. He's just like, I'm trying to get out of here. I just can't find the damn car. I feel like producers probably told him to go back in too, and then told, like, I don't know. This is how I look at the show now, but it's just like producers are like, oh, do you want to talk to the guys? And then the producers probably get Rachel and Gabby and are like, oh, go tell him to leave. He's back. Like, you just really never know what's happening behind the scenes. Because it is like, I don't think he's a bad guy, and it kind of sucks that like he has to leave that way. Like, it's kind of embarrassing for him to just get kicked out like that twice. Obviously, like he put his foot in his mouth, so he deserved it. But it still probably is hard for him because I don't think he's a bad person. So yeah, I mean, Blakely, do you have any final thoughts on that or what other guys should do moving forward?
Yeah, final thoughts on this. I just have to be honest. I think like mad slash betrayed Gabby is the best side of Gabby because she gives us some iconic faces, iconic lines, like when she told Clayton when he asked if he could walk her out, she's like, no,
No.
and then even here, she doesn't even give Chris a chance. I think she turns around and is like, so do you want to explain to us why you're inappropriately talking about having sex with us when you haven't even had a conversation or whatever she said, but it was just like, boom, right off the bat, and I was like, yes, you go, Gabby. I'm like, I love her when she's in that fierce mode because she's so articulate, and there's just you can't bulldoze her, like Rachel is a little bit, I think they're both kind, but I feel like just Rachel's a little bit sweeter, she's a little bit more understanding, she's gonna give you a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt, where Gabby's just a little bit more ruthless, like you're not playing that game with me, bucko. So I just love seeing that. I liked how they had each other's back. I felt like they had a little bit of good cop bad cop going on, where like Gabby was kind of like the a little more, I don't want to say use the word aggressive, but where Rachel was a little bit more calm and was like, well, we are trying to listen to you. But to your point, Morgan, like he did a terrible job trying to explain himself. Instead of, it was just a defense mechanism, and then it was telling the girls, well, you're not giving me a chance to explain. Well, what are you doing right there? Because this is your chance to explain. Explain then. Like, I hate when they say you're not giving me a chance, because they're sitting here quiet letting you explain, and you're doing a terrible job at it.
I mean, if he didn't explain it to them, like that was his opportunity. Like he's not gonna get a rose and get to go on a one-on-one next week and explain what he meant. Like it's like you gotta
Exactly.
address this now if you even want to get the rose, but you never got. And then you guys could have played things out. I think that they would have gave him a chance if he explained it, but he just didn't know how to handle himself, and it wasn't a match for him. He wasn't meant to be with Rachel or Gabby. So 6 guys ended up going home after that, were Justin, Matt, Brandon, Colin, Ryan, and John, which means there are 21 men left in the house and 2 Bachelorettes. We are going to get to your questions and comments. If you guys have anything you want to chat about in Bachelor Nation, whether it's this episode or just other drama going on in the nation, definitely leave those questions in the live chat now. But Morgan, we're down to 21 guys left. I'm probably going to travel in a couple of weeks. What do you think is next?
Well, we know they're getting ready to go on a cruise ship somewhere. I'm looking forward to that just because it's going to be something that we've never seen before. Also, something I'm really looking forward to are double dates. I mean, I saw
Yeah.
one very brief snippet of Gabby and Rachel on a double date. I can't even remember who they were with, but I think that is so fun. It's so fresh. It's new. So I'm excited to see how they navigate the rest of the season. And like the rest of Bachelor Nation, hope that, Gabby and Rachel don't get too pitted against each other. I feel like it's almost impossible for them not to when they're, competing for the same guys. But at the end of the day, I think that their friendship is stronger than, producer manipulation in that sense.
Blakely, what do you think is going to happen next week? We're still going to be in the mansion. Do you think they're going to get one-on-one dates, a big group date? How do we think this is going to play out based on the drama that just finished this week?
I think we're definitely getting a big group date, like a real one, not the mangent. Like they're gonna go out, they're gonna go, be active. They're gonna have, whoever's like the winning team, whatever, gets the smaller cocktail party afterwards. So I think that is definitely what we are going to see. Obviously, we are in store for a lot of tears with Rachel. I know, Morgan, you just brought up kind of like the being pitted against each other. And while we are seeing that, I also think what we're seeing is, the producers allowing a lot of control for Gabby and Rachel. Like we just saw in the last trailer where, again, a couple of the men are like, oh, I'm here for Gabby when Rachel wants to give them a rose. Rachel walks off and they're like, well, and I think Jesse comes out and he says something to the degree of, this how this is playing out right now isn't working for them. So I appreciate that they really are keeping this, united front. And if one of them is hurting from however the situation is playing out, then they're going to find a way to navigate that and make it a way that it's not going to, have that much of a negative impact. I don't know, at what point we get to that though. I still feel like it'd be so early for so many men, and maybe it's not so many men. Maybe they're just, making it look like that in the trailer. But I'm going to say so many men to turn down Rachel and like already know that they want Gabby instantly. But that's what I think that we are going to see.
Yeah, so Jennifer is saying Jason and Tina was the double date, Morgan. So I saw this in the trailer too. It looks like they're going to be in Paris doing that double date. I believe Paris is the first stop. So I'm sure they are probably going to travel episode 4, maybe 5. So I'm sure we'll see a few double dates throughout the season. And yeah, I guess this makes sense. Jason A said this week he was interested in Gabby, and he guess he's not going back on his word. Blakely, who do you think Logan's gonna go for? If Logan had to choose, do you think he'll go for Rachel or Gabby? Because it seems like he's right in the middle right now.
I truthfully have no idea. Because I feel like he's having really great, genuine conversations with the two of them. Like, they feel equal and side by side for me. If you were to ask me Eric, I would say Eric and Gabby have a stronger connection than Eric and Rachel do. And he seems to be playing kind of both sides of the field. But yeah, I have absolutely no idea about Logan. What do you think, Morgan?
I don't know why, but my gut says Rachel. I think that while Gabby, yes, is into him, I don't think she's that into him. I think that she is more into others, and that will be a contributing factor.
I feel like Rachel and Logan are vibing. What about Mario? So he, formed an early connection with Gabby, but then he wanted to give Rachel a chance, and it kind of was that shot of like Gabby in the eye, and that kind of affected Mario because then he was like the last one to get a rose, which doesn't always mean something, but like sometimes it does. It seems like sometimes the front runners always get the first few roses. What do you guys think about Mario? Do you think he's gonna pursue Gabby or Rachel, or is he gonna bite himself in the butt by not making a decision?
Morgan, what's your answer?
Oh, I don't know. I think Gabby. I think he'll go more for Gabby. I mean, they had their first kiss night one, and she gave him the first impression rose. So I feel like it's kind of hard to touch a good first impression. But like I said with Logan, I don't think at the end of the day Gabby will be as into him as she is, some others.
Yeah. You got to just feel
Yeah,
it out with both girls.
I felt like that situation was very uncomfortable for me. And I have to say, he lost a lot of points for me in his confessional when he was like, Gabby, Rachel, Gabby, Rachel. Like, no, no. Like, you're here for one of them, and they're choosing whether or not they want you. You don't get to just, flip flop from one side to the other when you want. Like, I think that's the one thing that I'm disliking about this double lead dynamic is that the fact that the men have more, or the contestants, if you will, because it could be swapped, but have more control. And it almost seems at some points like maybe more control than the women do. So I think that that's like something that I'm not totally loving from how this whole situation is playing out right now. And it's a little awkward too because they both want to get to know people, but then yeah, Gabby gave him the first impression rose. Truthfully, he lost some points from me when he wanted to pursue Rachel and also his confessional, but at the same time, like, playing devil's advocate, like, should he be allowed to be able to do that without it being an issue? I don't know.
I think you could get to know Rachel and see if there's something there. You've never had a crush on two guys at once, Blakely? I have like 7 crushes.
I mean, I'm sure I have, but I wasn't on a show and they weren't friends, and there's a whole other element here.
Yeah, I don't know. Jennifer says in the beginning of the Bachelor franchise, that was when they did Final Four was the fantasy suites. Okay, so it sounds like Chris used to watch the show way back in the day, and then he's missed the last 10 years. Do we think we'll see Chris on Paradise, Morgan? Do you want to give him another chance, or do you think there's any guys this season that deserve to go on Paradise would be better in that situation?
I think it's too early to tell, but I do think there was one guy that went home this week that I was very surprised to go home, and I don't know his name. We were talking about him before the live, but he was giving like the Boston translation to Gabby on night one. I was very surprised that he went home last night. So maybe he will go to Paradise.
I think his name was Ryan, right, Blakely?
That's what I thought.
So we have
I think
Justin, Matt, Brandon, Colin, Ryan, and John. Those are the 6 guys that went home.
but then we also have Roby and the twins from the first night. I think that the twins, I think that they need a redemption. Maybe it was just something off because they did the double date. I don't know. I think the twins need a redemption. So maybe we'll see them get on Bachelor in Paradise. Plus, like, twins make good TV. They didn't make great TV for the first night, but maybe they'll, help themselves out and make better TV for their second time around if they get that. And then, I love to Jordan. I have a soft spot for him, so I would love to see him somewhere, although I don't know that he's going to be like drama and make great TV, but I think he deserves a chance.
I think they just needed older twins. I mean, Jordan and Justin were great, but they were 24. I mean, Gabby's 31. I don't think she's
Sure.
looking to date a 24-year-old. So I think they could have brought in a little bit of hotter and older twins.
Facts.
Haley Wilson is saying that she's so sad Ryan went home. Yeah, I was a little shocked to see that. It felt like he had a connection with Gabby, but maybe not. I guess there's, things that aren't being shown. We only have 2 hours, and I do feel like they're doing a pretty good job showcasing both of their connections and then like the group dynamics because we were worried about time because nobody wanted to watch a 4-hour episode. But so far they're doing a good job. Morgan, what is Jennifer saying?
That Logan starts with Rachel, but in the trailer it shows him and Gabby, and he says he still has feelings on the other side. Great point. I forgot about that he does, sit down at one point and kind of does the old switcheroo. Now, they do try to trick us in the trailer, so who knows if he was actually talking to Gabby or Rachel in that scene. But it does seem like Logan gets to know and have feelings for both of them throughout their journeys.
Yeah, and that could bite Logan in the foot if he does not make a decision sooner than later. Logan's not the Bachelor. I think some of these guys need to remember these are the Bachelorettes. Crystal agrees. She says the twins were too young. Crystal, we hear you loud and clear, but I do feel like they'll be in Paradise, so maybe we'll see a redemption story from them. Let's start to wrap things up here.
Z-
Does anyone have any closing thoughts, Blakely?
would the twins be on Bachelor in Paradise this early, or would they have to wait until next year?
So they wrapped filming for The Bachelorette in, I believe, May, and then they filmed Paradise in June. So yes, the twins could have went to
Okay.
Paradise already, which is kind of a fast turnaround, and that's why sometimes we don't see guys from the top like 4 or 5 go to Paradise. Kind of like last year, Andrew S. and Justin didn't go because maybe they weren't ready since the breakup was too
Yeah.
fresh or it was too close with filming. But guys who got eliminated earlier, will definitely see them in Paradise if they were eliminated the first half of the
Okay.
season. Morgan, are you excited for next week? What do you think's gonna happen?
I am excited for next week. I don't want to say I'm a hater, but sometimes I can be a hater just because I feel like 2 hour episodes are so long. It's so much to be invested in every single week. But like I said before, I really am enjoying the 2 person lead because the whole episode just moves so much faster. We're not spending 45 minutes on a group day and then another 45 minutes on a one on one and then 45 minutes at the rose ceremony. It's just the wheels are turning and I love it. So I think next week we'll get some more one-on-ones. We'll get some more in-house drama. And I hope that we end it with a rose ceremony. I don't like when we have to wait more than 1 week to see guys go home.
Absolutely. And we want to hear from you guys. Let us know your favorite moments from this week's episode of The Bachelorette. Who are your winner picks? Who do you think is going to go far? Let us know in the comments down below. And do not forget to subscribe and ring the bell if you are new here so you're always up to date with all things Bachelor Nation. As always, I'm your host, Zachary Reality, joined with the lovely Morgan Wright and Blakely McHugh. Our social media handles are on the screen right now, so be sure to give us a follow. Come say hello. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will catch you in the next one. Bye.